Welcome back everyone. As promised, today I'm doing that full and detailed comparison between the Galaxy A52 5G and the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. This fan edition of the S20 5G has a lot of similarities with the 5G version of the new A52. With the same displays, battery capacity, and with some identical headline features, it can be hard to tell which one is a better buy in 2021. There is a distinct winner between these two for me, and you'll find out just why and which one is better suited for you through my speed test, my camera comparison, and just my overview comparison. I'll walk you through every important difference between these devices. Let's start with the build quality and the package contents. With the A52 5G, we have an entirely plastic housing. The sides may appear like stainless steel, but they are definitely not. The matte plastic is nice to hold in the hand, and thanks to its large battery cell, the whole device is well weighted. There is also no creaking or unwanted flex here. The S20 FE is built more solidly. It has aluminum around the sides, making it feel like you're holding metal, although the back is still matte plastic. Now, compared to the A52, you will notice that this phone feels more premium in the hand than the Galaxy A52. By the way, just to avoid confusion, I will be putting the A52 5G on the left side of your screen and the S20 FE on the right for the display shots when you're seeing them across the entire video. In the box with each phone, you will receive a standard wall adapter, a USB-C to A cable, and the SIM tool. These are the same wall adapter in case you're wondering, 15 watts only, though you can opt to buy a 25 watt charger separately because both phones do support faster charging with another brick. Both devices pack a 4500 mAh battery. The battery is not small, and so for most of my testing I did try on the 120Hz mode, not the standard 60Hz, and on the S20 FE I got 7 hours and 25 minutes of screen on time. The A52 5G lasted just 7 hours on the same usage. When pushed more with longer gaming sessions and all connectivity options being turned on, I got just around 6 hours and 5 minutes on the A52, and the FE improved upon that with results that gave me an extra 15 minutes. The displays here are both a very fluid 120Hz Super AMOLED panel at 6.5 inches. The resolutions are 2400 by 1080, which gives them a pixel density of 407 pixels per inch. The perceived quality of each panel is quite obviously the same. Both Galaxy devices have the micro SD card slot, FM radio, and NFC. These are three really helpful features that we don't always find with higher-end Android phones. In the settings, you can configure face-registered unlock on either phone. Of course, they can also be set up to work with just a fingerprint scanner on the screen, and for your consideration, here is the side-by-side fingerprint scanner speed test. As you can see, the speed for unlocking is the exact same. One important distinction is that the A52 5G has a headphone jack, whereas the Galaxy S20 FE does not. Alright, so time to talk about more specifications. Thankfully on these two phones, we have Qualcomm Snapdragon chips, and on the S20 FE there is a slightly higher tier, Qualcomm Snapdragon 865. This is paired with 6 or 8 GB of RAM. On the A52 5G, you also have 6 or 8 GB of RAM, and the processor is the Qualcomm Snapdragon 750G. Both chips are octa-core. Let's talk about the speed of both phones and how the Qualcomm chips inside compare. These are my Geekbench 5 benchmark test scores. The S20 FE multi-core score left the A52 in the dust. We'll see if this translates to real-world performance, but 645 versus 879 is no small difference for the single-core performance either. Let's get into the side-by-side speed test comparison. We're going to start with the boot up test, then do some app load up times, and then get into the web browser test. As I expected, the S20 FE 5G pulled ahead on the boot up and loaded a full 20 seconds ahead of the A52. I cleared all background apps and I made sure I was connected to the same network before I got into my next test. When I loaded up the Twitter app, I got the slight edge on the Galaxy S20 FE. No, nothing drastic, but as for Instagram, the load up was the exact same speed. For some reason, YouTube Music was much quicker to open on the A52 every time I tried it. Some apps would actually favor the more affordable Galaxy A52. For loading games, there was no contest. The S20 FE took the win every single time. Same can be said about the camera app, launching faster on the S20 FE. For my web browsing test on Google Chrome, I was pleased to see the FE also won by displaying sites a few frames faster. In the long period of time that I was testing these phones, gaming was an area that I found that had a bit of disparity. I want to be very clear, if you're a mobile gamer that, maxes out the graphics settings and the frame rate settings, I would go with the S20 FE. But if you're not maxing out the settings all the way on really graphically demanding games, then the A52 5G has no problems. It is no slouch, and I really enjoyed my gameplay on Call of Duty Mobile, on Genshin Impact, and on all the games that I played. They ran well on the A52, just not on all the way top settings. Yes, the A52 5G can already handle all the games I like, the FPS games, the racing ones, even Genshin Impact. Performance was very smooth on both phones when high graphics is enabled, of course. Now, bringing it past that on the A52 will cause a bit of lag, whereas there is none on the S20 FE. Neither had heating issues though. As for the software these devices are running, the newer A52 5G shipped with Android 11 and One UI 3.1. S20 FE shipped with an older Android and One UI version, but it has now been updated to the same latest software. Call quality, data reception, and network compatibility with different carriers was something that I tested thoroughly in my time with the phones, of course, and both worked phenomenally. My friends, I am always up for a camera comparison. This one is interesting because the A52 5G, which is actually the more affordable device between the two, has 4 lenses on the back, and the S20 FE has 3. On paper, there are many differences between these camera modules, and for one, the S20 FE has a 12 megapixel camera, whereas the A52's is 64 megapixels. We won't get too caught up in the numbers though, because the real results show much more than the specs. When I see the megapixel count on paper, it usually correlates to the result in the sense that the higher the number, the more we can actually crop into photos and zoom digitally. In this sense, it is true that the 64 megapixel main camera on the A52 lets us have more usable digital zooming range, but that might not be necessary for the S20 FE because it has a dedicated telephoto lens. This is not found on the A52 5G, and it is a practical lens with very good image results. Here are the main camera lenses compared. I went out to Spencer Smith Park to snap some memorable photos for spring 2021. It has to be said that I am a happy buyer when I see pictures like these. It's not hard to take a well-composed and natural photo with either phone, and the results are so good on either one, I would compare them to the iPhone 12 and the OnePlus 9 series. The capture detail with 64 megapixels on the A52 does prove to be better when we zoom in all the way. Even still, on the Fan Edition phone, you can get adequate detail. Dynamic range was a strong point for both phones. Colors are beautiful, and sometimes a little bit more saturated on the S20 FE. That's up to you whether you prefer it or not. I'm curious to hear, are you as impressed with these main camera results as I am? For that third and final lens on the S20 FE, we have an ultra-wide camera. Both phones have a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera, though I give the slight edge in quality to the S20 FE. I just think it's a small difference in the photo processing, and it is my personal preference. Now, the A52 5G has a dedicated depth scanning camera. It's used for portrait blur images. Nothing that software can't do alone, and honestly, between us, it is just a marketing gimmick, because I've seen this portrait blur effect done just fine on other phones that don't have the depth sensor, such as the S20 FE. I have demonstrated the macro lens camera on my other A52 videos, and this macro lens is the same one that's used in the A42 5G and the A32. Speaking of those other A-series phones, if you want to see the A52 versus A42 versus A32, wow, that's a lot of phones, but I can make that happen. The S20 FE does allow for 4K video recorded at 60 frames per second. The A52 also records 4K, though only at 30 frames per second. Since neither are optically stabilized, you will actually notice that the 4K 60 frames per second footage from the S20 FE is a lot more usable. In my opinion, both front cameras have very good results. If I had to say one was a winner, it would be the S20 FE because it blurred the background and processed the image more naturally, in my opinion. I'm not one to be really picky about photos of myself, but if you are, there are beauty modes on both of these phones that, make front camera photos go all the way from removing blemishes on your face to making you look like you just caked on makeup. Around the initial release of the S20 FE, I gotta be honest, I didn't share the same excitement and enthusiasm that other people had about this phone. Honestly, I thought it was a little bit overpriced at that time. But now looking at the deals that are going on for the S20 FE, I gotta say it's still not my go-to pick, but I would be really happy if this was my only phone. The A52 5G provides better overall value in my opinion. Now it would make for a better buy unless you really need the extra speed and performance from the Snapdragon 865 chip in the FE. If you need or really desire wireless charging on your phone, the S20 FE has that, whereas the A52 does not, and that is also something worth considering. I hope this made your purchase decision a lot more straightforward, and I hope you got all of the facts out of this comparison that you hoped for. Again, if there's anything that I did not mention in this comparison, go ahead and put it in the comments. I will gladly answer you if it is something that I am knowledgeable about. But that is all for this video. Thank you for watching, my friends. Bye for now.